Despite its popularity, we were pretty negative on the first Smile movie, so when the sequel started gaining some buzz, we weren't really sure what to expect. This time we follow a pop star gearing up for her big comeback. Join us as we discuss Smile 2. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always, and I don't know why he didn't just start with a smile on his face. That would have been the intelligent thing to do. But welcome, Tim.
Well, you ruined it because I was going to start smiling as soon as you introduced me, but fine, whatever.
I thought it would. I thought maybe you'd have a smile just already there, so when it fades up, they'd be like, Tim's happy.
Okay. No, it has to be like right away, like a jump scare, like it.
Okay.
Yeah, it has to be sudden.
Has to be sudden. All right. Yeah. Tell you what, we'll record one at the end, and I'll just cut it in somewhere just to catch people off guard.
Just do like a big loud sting. Like,
I'll go full screen with your face. I'll just cut to a full face of you smiling, then go back to the review. But yes, welcome everyone. It's a horror movie podcast. We get together, we talk about horror movie. It's that simple. We're catching up in 2024 movies still. Obviously, we got a little delayed because of the California fires, but we're here today to talk about Smile 2, if that wasn't already obvious based on the jokes being thrown around. So we'll start spoiler free, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers, and if you are enjoying the show on YouTube, please do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch, and of course you can get bonus content over at the Patreon and help keep all the shows coming, including Screams After Midnight. So I'll tell you more about all that at the end of the episode though. So yeah, Smile 1 was fairly popular
for some reason,
and we hated it. Like, true. We tore it to shreds. We did not like that movie at all, and for some reason it was, at least on a sort of popcorn public success level, fairly successful.
Well, the thing that was like annoying to me is I feel like a lot of like horror people liked it too. Like it'd just be one thing, if the normies were flipping out over it, but I feel like the people that should know better,
normies
seem to enjoy it.
Yeah, no.
Go watch a comedy.
Tim did air quotes there for comedy, just for the audio listeners. I feel the need to point that out. I don't know. It was like this weird thing, and maybe we were just grouchy. Maybe I think part of it is just that it was playing into a lot of things that we actively have grown to detest over the years. So regardless if it was maybe technically like had some ideas that were good or some things that were better done, it still overall just pissed us off.
Yeah, I just thought it was very generic. Like, I mean, it's been a while now, so I don't really remember too many details about it, which, is probably saying a lot because, it wasn't even like bad enough to really stick with me. But I just remember, just, thinking, even if maybe there's like a little tidbit here or there that wasn't that bad, it was still a lot of the kind of generic stuff I've seen before in terms of like scares and
I mean, I think at the time we talked about how it's effectively like a slightly altered version of The Ring, because it's like, hey, curse 7 days till you die, investigate it, try and figure a way to stop it, that usual stick. But mixed in with a lot of the typical supernatural stuff, like jump scares and like illusions where stuff's not really happened, but the character was seeing it in their head kind of thing for the last 10 minutes. And all that kind of stuff was what the first movie was. Now, that just sort of to set up how we felt about the first one, because the general consensus when Smile 2 was coming out, and then after it came out, is that most people were saying it was better than the first one. And that some people who didn't like Smile 1 said, hey, Smile 2 is actually pretty good. So I wasn't going to let that fool me necessarily, but I definitely was like, okay, I'm not going to go in with a bad attitude. People are saying this is actually a little bit different. It's improved. Let's see how it is kind of thing. That was my feeling.
Yeah, I would say it piqued my interest more. Like, I guess if a lot of people are just like, oh, it's just as good as the original, like just more of the same. And, I'd be groaning and being like, I don't know. But actually kind of thought the trailer looked like all right. And then hearing some of the things people were saying, I wouldn't say I was like gung-ho excited about it, but I'm like, all right, well, I'm a little intrigued. At least.
I think the thing that stuck out to me about the trailer, which is basically just the premise I'm saying here, is that the main character being a famous pop star, was at least that was something a little different. It was like, okay, that's not typically the type of character we follow. It's someone who's like in a public spotlight. Lots of people know who they are. There's a chance for a lot of like creepy fan encounters, that kind of like I could see like potentially what they could do with that and play with that. So that was kind of like the thing that I sort of noticed on the build up to release.
At the bare minimum, it's going to make this movie stand out versus like, can even people that were fans of the first movie, can anyone tell me what the person in the first movie did? Like, like what kind of character they were? Because I have no clue. I cannot remember at all.
Do you know what? I think that's one of the few things I kind of remember, actually. And I only remember because the only memorable scene from the first movie, other than the one or two shots that were in the trailer, is the initial, because you know when someone gets the curse, it's because someone else who has the curse smiles at them, then kills themselves, right? I remember it was a patient, and the new main character was like the therapist or doctor at the rehab clinic or whatever it was.
Oh,
well, actually, I think she was a therapist, maybe, but like that was she was in that kind of like professional capacity, and that's how it started. Now, could I tell you her name, what she looked like, how the story ended? I could not tell you any of those things, but I remember that. So
yeah, like I guess it's not really much of a spoiler, but this movie, I guess, kind of starts off as a little bit of a continuation of the last movie, and I was like, all right, I guess this person was probably a character in the last movie, but I can't remember.
It's a little cold open. Yeah, so I remember him being in the first movie, mainly just because I know the actor's face, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember him being around, right?
Yeah.
But I admit when this opening scene started, and we won't spoil anything yet, of course, I did sort of like wonder, like, wait, am I supposed to know where he is or what he's doing, or like who these other characters are? Because I did not. And by the end of the scene, I thought, no, I don't think we do. I think I get that this is just a bunch of new characters in the context of why he's doing the thing that he's doing. But like, I was worried for a second I was supposed to remember a bunch more stuff, and I'm really glad that after the opening scene, it was like, oh no, it's just a new character now. We're on a new thing, you know, like, and the rules of the movie will be sort of brought up again as we go through it, so we don't have to like worry too much about remembering things. But I will say this though, before we get to general impressions, I saw the runtime for this movie. And I was not thrilled at seeing the 2 hours and 7 minutes that this lasts. It was a bit of a red flag for me, and it's not that some horror movies can't sustain that length, right? Okay, The Shining exists, I get it, right? There's some good ones, but given that I don't feel super optimistic about the first one, this having a long runtime was definitely like, okay, you're gonna have to earn this movie. I'm like, you need to prove yourself with this minute count. But yeah, anyway, this just really enforced the idea into me that I need to check the run times before I do the movies, because both this one and the one we did yesterday, I did not slot enough time for. Yes.
So I ended up having to like, you know, sneak the last like 10 minutes while my kids are watching like Gabby's Playhouse or whatever.
Yeah, but at least with The Substance, that was like a prestigious movie that's up for awards. And I'm sorry, Smile 2 has won some Saturn awards. I do apologize. I can't besmirch it. But with this though, I genuinely was thinking 90 to 100 minutes. Like that was really the because I expect that from most horror movies. That's just the normal. But they're all getting a bit too big for their britches, Tim. They all think they can be big epics now, because like now the action movies are like 3 hours long almost every time. The horror genre is like, oh well, we have to level up to 2 hours then to keep the distance about right.
Yeah, I mean, where do we lay the blame on this? Like, did this start with like MCU movies?
Oh, I don't know. I do not know. I as far as horror movies goes, like, as much as I love Midsommar, I do wonder if Ari Aster's to blame for horror, like directors thinking, oh, we can make long horror movies now.
Yeah, possibly.
Because yeah, you can absolutely make a long horror movie. You can, and some movies absolutely justify the runtime, but a lot of them don't.
That's what director's cuts are for. Yeah. Give us a nice 90-minute theatrical, and then if you want to do your 4-hour epic too hot for theaters edition or whatever, we'll watch it.
I can't be that blanket because I love Terrifier 2. I love how long Terrifier 2 is.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Some movies I don't mind being long. I guess it just comes down to, am I enjoying what it's doing with its runtime? Well, let's find out. Tim, what did you think of Smile 2?
Actually, before we jump into that, just because the thought is in my head now, I do think there should be some type of math equation where, like, there should be a formula. This only applies to seeing stuff in theaters, but the longer your movie is, like, the shorter amount of like previews and attractions, you should have.
Oh. That would probably make them try and make shorter movies then, because the theaters make money from all those ads. So I don't know if the movie studios don't, but
yeah. I mean that sounds like a win-win.
Which is why it'll never happen though, because the movie studios will just say, no, we don't care about your ads. We're just going to keep making whatever movies we want, and then the theaters will be like, well, we can't take away our ads because that's how we make most of our money.
The thing that's just like so weird to me though is like it feels like, I don't know, there must be some type of cost though where it's like, well, yeah, but don't you think you could run more movies if you weren't taking up like 5 extra hours between like all the commercials and trailers and stuff you run through the day? Or
well, see, Tim, that was a concern a long time ago, but then they built multiplexes that have like 12 to 18 screens each to take care of that problem. So unfortunately, I think and especially since attendance has dipped a little bit in the last like 5 to 10 years, that's not an issue anymore. Like they've got enough seats for everyone who's willing to pay. It's fine.
Sure.
I hate to like kill all your potential reasons for fixing this, but
I mean, I'm just trying to make things better, but I mean, we live in the present, so we know that's not possible.
The world's got bigger issues, but bigger fish to fry right now, I think, than...
Oh, really? Like what?
Oh my god.
Name one bad thing that is currently going on.
Tim, I could give you 10 from today based on the news cycles right now. Oh dear. Anyway, Tim, what did you think of Smile 2?
So just to reiterate what you said, absolutely hated the first one. Was really not looking, again, I wouldn't say I was like, completely against it, but I wasn't like super excited about it. I was interested to see how it was going to go. And I feel like that this doesn't happen often. I am kind of pleasantly surprised to say I did kind of like the movie. I wouldn't say I loved it. Like, I think there's still plenty of nitpicks, but I think the big thing about this one is it just has a very charismatic and entertaining lead in Naomi Scott playing Sky Riley. Was it?
Yeah.
The last name?
Yeah, that was it. I'll be honest, as soon as we started getting pop star stuff, I was like, okay, I'm going to start confusing this character and the character from Trap in my head.
Lady Raven.
Yeah, Lady Raven. I feel like it's weird that we got 2 horror movies that both focused around a pop singer.
And not even, it's a little different, but Elizabeth Sparkle in Substance, like, not a pop singer, but like
sure. Yeah.
Celebrity. I guess it's a dangerous time to be a woman in the media.
I think that's true.
I guess not.
You make that joke, Tim, but like, it's not a coincidence that last year we had 2 movies about the Catholic Church forcing pregnancies on women. Like, these things do reflect like real concerns that are happening in the world. There's a truth to that.
I mean, it's always so funny whenever you're like, anyone's like, oh, like, keep politics out of horror movies or whatever, when it's like, I mean, horror movies has always like reflected the fears of the time. Like, it's you can go back to like Dracula and like stuff.
That was a fear of like sex basically back in the day. If you want something a bit more layered than that, then just you can go back to the 60s. Night of the Living Dead. That entire thing is just full of political commentary. So shut up, you losers.
But anyway, I mean, and it is so funny to compare Sky to Lady Raven, because not that I know much about like pop music or pop concerts or whatever,
or
but
women.
I guess true. But I mean, from what I can tell, just like the production that goes into like her numbers and songs just seem to blow Lady Raven out of the water. Apologies.
Tim, to be fair here, what you're saying here is that this movie had a bigger budget. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I think, she has a great performance. She's a very like entertaining and interesting character to follow. There's obviously like some trauma and stuff that she's dealing with, which it can sometimes be eye-rolly in horror movies. But I thought, for the most part, it was dealt with good in here. And again, I don't know if that's like the big difference between this and the first movie, where the first movie just had a very generic main character that just made it feel pretty boring to follow, whatever. While here, I find the main lead to be very engaging and fun to follow. I would say the problem I still have with this movie is like, I think for the most part I thought it looked pretty good and had like like some fun like gore and shots and again good performances. But it like the thing I still feel like it's lacking is in the horror department. Like I thought there's still some cheap jump scares, and I don't know, maybe I just don't like the general conceit of this like curse or whatever, but I just normally don't find like the way people are smiling to be like that scary or creepy. It just feels like a little too forced. And like not to say that there weren't a few parts that were effective. Like, we'll talk about it more in spoilers. Like there were a few instances where I was like, okay, I thought that was pretty cool. But it also does kind of annoy me, like thinking about some of the rules and stuff that this demon or curse or whatever has, where sometimes it just feels like a little too powerful to the point where it's like, all right, well, it kind of feels like there's really nothing you can do to fight back. Like it all feels kind of fruitless, which in some ways makes it kind of bleak. But
there's nothing to root for as the movie's going on. You just realize that there's no point in even pretending the character's going to find a way to fight this. Yeah,
which I mean, we'll talk more about how that kind of configures into the ending. I will say there are parts of the lead up to the ending that I'm not crazy about and that we'll talk about, but I actually do like kind of like the final moments of it and what that kind of says from there. So I'm kind of surprised to say that, I'm not going to be like so enthusiastic where I'm like, okay, this is like, one of my top movies of the year, but I actually did, enjoy it for what it was, which is very surprising considering how much I disliked the first one.
Okay, that's interesting. I will say that early on, I was noticing a couple of nice moments of direction, and a couple of nice little touches and how it did things. I think as it was introducing the main character, I was like, okay, she's interesting. Naomi Scott is a captain enough performer to make this work. And I think one of my problems with the premise of Smile in general, and I think this is still a thing for Smile too, is that the most interesting part is when they get the curse, because that's when you get your big moment of someone creatively killing themselves to pass on the curse. And the sad part is the premise does not allow for more than one of those. So I'm like,
it's true.
The premise should be reworked. It should find a way to make it so that people are doing that constantly to the main characters throughout the whole movie. I want a body count, damn it. But that's not even my big point. That's not even my big complaint though. That's just something that I think I would enjoy more. I think my bigger complaint with the premise of Smile is how frustrating and repetitive I find a lot of the movie. And I think I felt that here again with Smile 2. I think it's a little bit better than Smile 1, don't get me wrong. But I still felt that by the time I got to the second half, I was kind of just waiting for it to end. I'd kind of lost all interest in everything that was happening. And a big part of that is that it's at a certain point, it becomes this just repetition of the same basic idea, which is that the main character of Skye will see or hear something that no one else sees, and she will respond to it, making her look crazy, and then people are awkward, and it's like, hey, this looks bad because she's a recovering drug addict. Everyone knows that, so she looks like she's off the deep end again. And you just keep doing that. It gets bigger and bigger as it goes on, but at a certain point, when your entire conceit of the movie is that at any point, it can just reveal, oh, that thing that just happened didn't really happen, and it does that over and over again to the point where it starts to overlap. There's stuff towards the end, and I won't spoil anything here, where there's reveals of stuff that's not real, and then it turns out that an entire chunk of time is not real, and it's like, so there's just not real upon not real. I can't trust anything, and I don't find that compelling. I don't find that like, oh, I'm inside the character's head and it's all from her perspective and it's all crazy. Like at a certain point I just lose interest because I don't trust anything you're showing me. And I just there's nothing to latch on to and be like, oh, there's a through line here that I can see as my lightning rod, you know? Like, there's nothing like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like what I was saying, where it frustrates me with how powerful this thing is, because, yeah, it just can basically do anything, be anything at any time.
Yeah, there's basically no rules to what it can do. It can just trick the main character in any way it wants.
So it's like, you know, we complain about like dream sequences, but it's almost like the entire movie could be a dream sequence at any point, basically.
As far as the main character's concerned, it is, yeah.
Yeah.
There's obviously parts that are real and other characters are experiencing, but we the audience, can't necessarily trust that, because the entire movie's conceit is to trick us. That's what it wants to do. It wants to keep us on edge. But I just got kind of bored, and add the runtime to that, I was painfully bored in the back half of this movie. By the time she gets to the point where she even starts to like learn that there's like, you know, like there's a chat, like, I'll rephrase that. By the time that she spends an hour of this movie, a full hour, just like having these crazy things happening with no idea or context as to why, and she just thinks she's going crazy. It's just over an hour in before she finally starts to get like a seed or a breadcrumb that leads to the, oh, what's going on, right? What's the happening here? And part of me kind of appreciated that early on, because I was like, oh, we're not doing the investigation thing. That's nice, because I didn't really want to do that again. But then it started like so late into the movie, where it was like, it almost felt like, oh, you've not actually developed like this. Like, if you weren't going to do it, you should have just stayed away from it entirely and just have it build to whatever your big ending is going to be. Because I actually do agree, the very final scene, I think, is probably the way that everyone like would like this to end, and it made sense to me to end that way. I think everything we do for like half an hour before it does that is just a giant waste of our time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, no, it definitely could have been cut down. Like, I actually watched this twice because I forget when, but at some point, you know, my wife and I were looking for something new to watch, and so that just happened to be like one on the cards. And I do feel like I was much more invested the first time, whereas watching it the second time here, I did feel the length a lot more, because, yeah, it does just drag on. And so much of it is like, you know, a similar thing where it'd be like, yeah, she sees something a little weird or a little creepy, and it cuts back to her, cuts back to the thing, cuts back to her, cuts back to the thing, cuts back to her. I was like, all right, we could have like chop this down by 50% or something. Like, we don't need so much like back and forth or whatever.
Honestly, and there's nothing wrong with what I'm about to say in a vacuum. Like, this is valid, and if I was making a movie, I'd do a scene like this where you see your main character's face react to something, but you don't show it for like a good 30 seconds, and you sort of like, oh, milk it, like, what is she looking at? But this movie does that so many times that it starts to become laughable at a certain point, where I'm like, okay, she sees something else. She's been seeing creepy shit all movie. This is not a surprise to me anymore.
Right.
So, yeah, I was very frustrated still with the general premise, which I just don't think appeals to my horror taste. But I also think it's repetitive, and I think it's just frustrating. I was frustrated, and I did not expect Pizza Hut to be so integral to the premise of the movie, but we'll see what that is in spoilers. I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah. I don't know. It's really interesting because I feel like this is such an improvement over the first movie, despite it obviously still a lot of flaws. But I don't know. It's like there's something here, and I just wonder if the director maybe just needs to be like reined in a little bit, like, because like you said, like, you know, there's like some times where there'll be like a pretty shot, or like, you know, he'll be doing something interesting with the camera where it's like, okay, yeah, you know, you're not just like, you know, setting the camera up and not thinking about it or whatever. Like, there's clearly like, you know, some kind of like cool things here and there. So I don't want to say like, you know, the director is like talentless or whatever, but I don't know, maybe it just needs someone else there to be like, all right, let's lessen on this and lighten up on that or whatever. Because, I don't know. I feel like there is stuff to kind of admire and be impressed about, but then also there's a lot of stuff that's annoying too.
Yeah. And it's Parker Finn who directed the first one as well. So it's the same like creator who's done both movies now. So it's it's very much his thing. And I mean, I think like to be careful here, like maybe at a certain point, this type of premise just does not work for me. At a certain point, maybe I have to just admit that, but I can kind of at least explain why it doesn't work for me and why I find it so frustrating and not entertaining at a certain point where I'm just kind of, because like there's tension that is kind of set up that I don't think is really followed up on as well. Because when she has her whole big incident where she sees someone die and gets the curse, like that's a place where she doesn't want to know anyone she's been, right? We'll get into that in spoilers exactly why, but she kind of has to leave, and I thought, oh, that's interesting because she threw up, and she even Googles at one point on her phone, like, does vomit have DNA in it? Like, if I vomited at a crime scene, will they be able to figure out it was me? And then the answer just said it depends, and I don't know how accurate that is. Do you know what? I feel like that's just like a really like, oh, they can't say we're wrong, because if we say it depends, then technically that's just right, regardless. But yeah, and I was like, oh yeah, like there's a lot here about like, because they really play up the idea of like, okay, she's this ex-addict, right? She's been in rehab, and there's a whole backstory that she's got, and all the rest of it. And I was like, okay, when she starts saying crazy things, it's going to look like she's using again, and that's going to be a big part of it. And I kind of feel like they spend a lot of time bringing it up, but at the same time, I don't think it actually mattered that much in the back chunk of the movie. Like I don't feel like other than a couple of times when someone says, "Hey, are you using again?" and she says, "No, I'm not. Test me." Like I don't feel like it really comes up that much in the last like 40 minutes. So
no, that's true.
I don't know if it mattered all that much. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably like more stuff you could have brought up, or like, I don't know. I mean, you have like characters saying like, oh, like, you have to be careful because, this thing needs to go well, or we have a lot of money invested in this thing. But I don't know if it would have worked better if you see more of like a threat coming from the actual people instead of like everyone just telling her, that she has to do this or that. Yeah,
because her mother's her manager, so it's always her mother who's saying, like, you have to do this for this reason, you have to be like this, look after yourself, here, drink some water, do you need anything, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's her constantly.
But it kind of feels like no matter how, like, she's messing up, like, it seems like she still has, like, the thing the next day. Like, it's never like, oh, they're pulling the plug. It's like, all right, you did a really crazy, weird thing today, but make sure to be on your game tomorrow because we got another big thing. It's like, okay.
Yeah, and it's almost like they could have went in an interesting direction with the mother-daughter relationship where, like, maybe they'll go down the path where, like, are we sort of, like, looking at the mother and being like, okay, do you care more about your daughter's well-being or her success because you're tied up in it? And they kind of raise that question, but it's like, they don't really go much places with it because by the time it's raised, it's a little bit too late to really do much. And I it almost feels like, oh, someone actually realizing she just needs help and that she's in trouble might have been like a sweet direction to go in before things get crazy at the ending, but it kind of felt like, I don't know, I'm just very frustrated. I'm very frustrated. I was pretty bored, honestly, for like half the runtime. So as much as I do think it's technically a bit better, and just because there are a few scenes that I kind of liked, and there's definitely some confident direction here or there, I just did not get into it, and it lost me the more the movie went on, and almost every time it revealed something in the back, like 40 minutes or so, I was just like kind of like sighing and being like, yeah, of course, yeah, yeah, of course it is, yeah, that makes sense, yeah, on you go.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I'm more positive than you, but I still don't love it. Like, it's not I'm not fully on board the smile train, at this point, but yeah, I guess maybe I was impressed by the leap in quality for me, but yeah, I agree, still plenty of flaws and like stuff that needs to be worked out before this would be like a franchise that I get excited about, which I forget if it was announced, but I assume they're doing a 3 because I think this one did fairly well.
That makes sense. So you know what, I'll do a quick Google. Smile 3. It's a planned sequel to Smile 2. It's expected to begin filming in 2025. Yep, so I guess that's a...
Yeah.
That's the Google AI, admittedly. I hate that that's at the top, because I always read it because it's there, but... At least with this is just a factual, simple thing. Is it happening or not? And it says yes, so I'll trust it, but I don't like that that's what I read.
There needs to be, like, some way just to opt out of, like, all AI. Like, I never want to see it, and, like, I feel like every time I don't know, open up a program or something, like some little chat box will pop up and I'll be like, hey, and I'm like, hey, who are you? And like, oh, I'm the AI assistant. And I'm like, oh no, get away.
Yeah, they're firing real people and replacing them with the robots. The Skynets are all about it. Anyway, let's get to the spoilers. I don't think there's too much more we could say. I guess we can mention whenever there is some kind of violence or gore effect. I think it varies. I think there's a couple of moments that feel like they would be more fun if it was less CG. You know, like, and I get that there's always going to be a little bit of CG with some of these things because of like the crazy things they're doing, but it did take me out of a couple of the moments that I think were supposed to be the big money makers. You know, later in the film.
Yeah, I don't think the CG was necessarily bad, but it was definitely CG. Like, it's not like, you know, it fooled you first and a second. It
just does that look to it. It's the sort of thing where if I'm really invested in what's going on, like, I can live with it because it's like adding to what the story is. But if I'm not invested in what's going on, then it just like, oh, that's just taking me out of it even more because like that's all I'm seeing and noticing. So yes, was that like a howl that I was hearing in the background there? What's going on?
Yeah, it's one of my in-laws' dogs.
It just didn't sound like a bark. It sounded a bit more, I don't know, howly, I guess.
Yeah, he's quite old, and sometimes he gets into a barky mood.
Okay. All right, spoilers for Smile 2. You have been warned. So, yes, spoilers? Okay, good. Yeah, I guess we'll just quickly mention the opening because it's kind of separate from everything else. So Kyle Gallner is like his character from the first one, and it says 6 days later, and I'm like, oh god, don't expect me to remember anything, please. And I was like worried because, you know, and to be fair, there's some nice direction here. There's like a long oneer following him, you know, putting on like a balaclava, going up to this house, holding a guy at gunpoint, and going in.
Like all that stuff.
And it was like I was like, oh, am I meant to remember these guys? But it kind of becomes clear as he's going that he effectively is just trying to find someone really bad to pass the curse on to because he doesn't want to pass it on to anyone who's good. So he's found these guys that have apparently killed like a child, I think that he said. But of course they fight back and he ends up shooting them, and he's the guy, like the gangster dies before he has a chance. Well, he stabs the first guy quite violently actually, but he shoots the other guy and he's like, no, you can't die, you have to be alive to witness what I'm about to do. And the other gangsters show up and chase him through the house, and to be fair, they found an interesting way to freshen up someone goes onto the road and gets like surprise hit by a vehicle, because I didn't see this one coming because it happens during the chase. You're so caught up in just like the camera tracking back, following him as he's running from gunshots, that when he runs onto the road you're not even thinking about the fact that, you know, he's going to get hit with something. So I like that, and I did actually quite like that the smear of blood made
that was cool.
the smile on the road. I thought that was a really inspired little touch to like set up the title.
I don't really have like anything too negative about this opening.
No, honestly, my only negative was that when it started, I was like, oh god, I need to remember something, and I didn't. But like, yeah, it was perfectly solid for what it was, and I guess it kind of sets up like the theory that comes later on about like how you could maybe get out of this, because technically he dies before he can be killed by the curse.
Yeah, so I was curious about that. Like, does that just like end it forever, or
seemingly?
How does it start up again?
Well, the guy who kills himself with the weights in front of Sky, is he the guy that sort of runs in and gets scared during this opening scene? He seemed kind of familiar.
Oh, that's a good question. Possibly. I guess that would make sense.
I wonder if it just kind of hopped to him. Well, because here's the thing. Almost like... So the character we meet later on who has this theory that it wants to help Sky, right? This nurse who is investigated all this because his brother was one of the victims like 8 people ago. All the second time we see him turns out to all be fake. So it makes me wonder, like, was he ever real? Was he ever actually offering a solution?
Okay. I mean, I guess we're going to talk about it at some point. So
how do you go?
So you think basically the whole scene inside the Pizza Hut was basically not real?
Yeah, I absolutely think that. Because the so okay, we're going to the end first here, just to set all this up, right? So the end of this movie, right, and it's an ending that I think I sort of predicted when I saw the trailer, and I'm not mad that I predicted, because it is the way to end this movie based on who the character is that the main character, who's been prepping for the start of this new tour in New York, is at her first show, and she smiles and is being watched by like a crowd of thousands, and does the murder. She stabs herself in the throat with her own microphone in front of everyone. So there's thousands of witnesses.
Not that it matters much, but wait, I thought it was in her eye that the.
Oh, it may have been her eye. Sorry, I may just misremember, but it was like a fancy looking microphone that she used to do it though.
And then I guess one thing that I did think was kind of interesting for like a fairly gory movie, I did like the restraint of, while this is all going on, you're just focused on the audience's reaction, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, although I was paying close attention to all the extras that you could see, and I did think it was strange that none of them were turning away. You'd think at least a couple of them would be
That's
like,
true.
"Oh, I can't look at this,"
or like someone run on stage and like grab it from her or something. I mean, I know it's pretty shocking, but you think like at least a security guard or something would. I don't know.
Right. So yeah, ending makes sense. But here's the thing: by the time we get to that point in the movie, though, like the show has effectively been cancelled for a number of reasons, right? We haven't heard that officially, but there's no way this show was still planned to go on. Meaning that everything from at least before the mother's apparent death, because she's also there at the end, right? All of that has to be fake. All of that has to just be in her head. It has to be an illusion. But this is the demon or whatever in her head the entire time, just building her to the point where, she realizes she's actually just on stage as planned. From the start of the week, she was planned to always be here. And that does make some sense, because it's not like this person that passed the curse to her. It's not like he seemed like from the outside perspective, he seemed like he was still just at his home being the same loser he always was, and then did this thing right at the end. So presumably, no matter what's in her head throughout the course of this movie, to everyone else, she's acting fairly normal up until that final moment at the end, where she actually finally smiles and does the deed.
Okay, I guess I'm not disagreeing with that. I guess in my head, as I was watching it, what I was assuming was basically that stuff still happened. I mean, not everything. Like, obviously, like, killing her mother didn't happen or whatever, but
it's a big asterisk, but go on.
But like I assume that the stuff in the Pizza Hut was happening, but then since this demon is so powerful or whatever, that it could basically just like at the end of it transport her to like where she needs her to be or whatever. I'm not saying that that's like correct or whatever. It's just as I was going, that's what I was just kind of thinking happened. But
I think the way it transitions to that scene makes it feel like, no, this has just all been like, this isn't working because you're not really here. You're not really killing yourself. Because the whole plan is that she's going to, this nurse guy is going to stop her heart for several minutes, so she's technically dead. Basically, he's trying to pull a season 1 of the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where technically the prophecy of the Slayer dying was fulfilled because her heart stopped for a couple minutes, but she came back.
Very good. I mean, God, if that's true though, that just really frustrates me, because that just means like so much of the movie is just like bullshit. It just like didn't happen.
Honestly, I question so much of it, like, given the fact that because there's like another character who like wanted her to do this like charity event earlier on, right? He's there clapping at the end, which makes me think, that probably means that entire segment where she went to this charity dinner and said a lot of crazy stuff and talked about her dead boyfriend and all. I mean, we'll get into all the backstory of this, but like all that stuff where she freaked out in front of everyone and caused a big scene and it was really awkward, Like, given the ending, I don't think that happened either. I think that's all just, like, everything I think in this movie past a certain point is just in her head. And she's still just rehearsing to do the show as normal. It's almost like in the real world, as far as everyone else is concerned, she's mostly just on autopilot, just doing what she's supposed to be doing. Maybe she has a couple of weird little things. Because even the character who witnesses her act the craziest to some extent, her best friend that she's rekindling with after a year, turns out to have been fake the whole time. And her friend never actually called her back. So you've got that, but then you've got the reveal that even that reveal that she is fake happened in the section of the movie that turns out to be fake. So I kind of hate all this, Tim. I hate it.
Yeah, no, I don't like that either. But then it's kind of, I mean, now I'm just like, it's raising like more questions for me, because then if that's the case where everything is fake, then why have a realization that the Gemma, the best friend character, was fake? If you're in an illusion, why realize part of the illusion is illusion, but then not the rest of it? You know what I mean? Like, if the demon can control that. Because
the demon just wants to mess with her. It wants to scare her and give her these scary moments where she realizes that something bad's happening. That's it. The spooky demon wants to terrorize the person. It's the same bullshit excuse you give in every supernatural movie where a ghost or a demon is messing with people.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, I remember so little from the first one, but I feel like that, or at least maybe in the first one, it didn't seem so evident that that's like what was going on. Like, from what I remember.
In the first one, it felt, from what I remember, it felt like they were doing the investigation thing a lot more, and they were trying to like end the curse. Because I remember them going to a house at the end of the first one vaguely, and like trying to deal with the demon in some way. So there was like more like, oh, there's a demon here to like actually maybe kill kind of thing. This does not do that, which is good. Like, I don't think any of that was good in the first one, so I'm not mad that they didn't do that. But at a certain point, I just don't care when you keep revealing things are an illusion to her.
Yeah, I guess there's like some examples where like it's not as egregious to me, where it's like, all right, when you have the scare scenes when like she's home alone at night in her apartment and she like sees something scary, like, to me that's not that bad, because it's like, okay, it's trying to get you when you're like alone and vulnerable. But then, yeah, just have like large sections of her interacting with other characters that is, completely fake. Like, that to me is like frustrating. Because then it's just like, well, it's hard for me to care when I never know exactly what's real and what's not. And obviously, like, I don't think it would, kill you before the 7 days are up or whatever. So I don't know. If something weird has happened on the third day, it's not like it's going to have much consequence, you know?
Yeah, and if people say, oh, I'm wrong about this, and that everything that happened before the final scenes was all real, and like she just like got better after the Pizza Hut thing, and somehow the concert was back on. But of course, that conveniently ignores the fact that she thought she killed her mother, which is a whole other thing in itself. Like, the ending then at that point means that, well, if that was all real, then to me it means that like the ending's in her head because the demon's just winning and like doing stuff. But we're also not at day 7 yet, right? We're not actually a week later, even at the ending. I don't think. I could be wrong, but I didn't feel like we actually got to day 7.
That's a good point. I mean, I wasn't counting the days, so I'm not sure, but that'd be very strange if it wasn't. I mean, one thing I will maybe say is, like, the mom did mention, although who knows, maybe it was a demon, but at one point she's saying like, oh, like, we put so much into this concert, like, we can't back out now, like, if we do, that's the end of us or whatever. So while I agree, like, she's been doing so many crazy things that like any normal person would be like, we have to cancel this. I don't know if maybe the mom like reassured everyone or smooth talked everyone into being like, oh no, like, we're still gonna go on, it'll be okay, and whatever. But
yeah, but then the mom's dead.
I don't know. I mean, that could be an illusion though.
Oh, just that part's the illusion. right?
I mean, that's the thing that's frustrating, because it's like, well, I don't know. Maybe this part is real, but then maybe this part wasn't.
Especially since so we do the whole thing where she's in the hospital, she's woken up after like her scary night, and the mum has this debate with her, and then it looks like the mother like takes a shard of glass and starts stabbing herself, and she freaks out, and then of course she has the realization when she tries to run out of the hospital room that the shard of glass is in her hand, and it's like, oh no, I did this, right? This is a running thing that happens as well. It happens later in the car where it's like, oh, the person who's driving is actually an illusion. Wait, who's driving the car? Oh, it's that me. I'm driving the car. Like we do that a few times in the movie. But there's a whole extended segment where we play on the tension of she's obviously not intentionally and something took over her, right? Presumably, but she has killed her mother. And she has to try and get out of the hospital, and she has to, shut the door so the assistant guy doesn't come in. She has to try and like sneak out the building, but she gets caught, and they all notice the blood on her. And like we do a whole thing where she has to run away with her friend before the police arrive. All of it is meaningless because the mother's not dead, unless she is, in which case the ending is just in her head, and that makes the ending worse.
But like, what if the ending is a thing where, okay, the concert is still happening, but the demon's in her head now, and it's showing her all these things she wants to see, which I guess in theory would make you smile or something if you see all your friends and loved ones cheering you on or something. I don't know. Just
yeah, but that means
putting something out there.
But that means the concert's not really happening, though. If it's just an illusion to make her see what she wants.
No. I'm saying the concert is still happening, but like what she's looking out on, like when she sees the mother and stuff, like that's an illusion from the demon.
Okay, how did we get to the point then where the concert's still on, though, if everything else wasn't an illusion?
Wait, what do you mean? Like
everything that happened before, everything would go to the Pizza Hut, like killing the mom, not killing the mom, whatever.
I mean, what I thought with the pizza was literally like this demon is just like so powerful and can do whatever the hell it wants that it could just like transport her. I'm not saying that
I think that even worse. I think that's possibly the worst option is it could just teleport her in time to the exact spot where it's going to strike, even though technically. But the fact that characters are there who are either dead or should hate her guts by now, and they're happy and clapping. I mean, okay, you could say that, yeah, it's just in her head, but like, she still, and but the ending's only interesting to me if it's real, because the ending is like the idea that she's going to do this in front of a crowd of thousands of people is what makes it interesting, and a neat evolution of what the premise is supposed to be.
Well, what I will say is, I'm probably more confused now than ever, but when I was watching, I thought I had a grasp on it, but maybe I didn't. But I will say I am like 99.9% positive that the ending actually happened.
Okay.
Like her killing herself at the concert, I think, at least to me, I think that is definitely real.
It's real to me, damn it.
Yeah, whether how she got to the concert, the stuff that happened before, whether that was an illusion, I have no idea. But I think in terms of like just the fact that the demon's goal is to have you kill yourself in front of someone to spread the curse, and just it's so juicy to have her, do that in front of like
that makes sense.
Thousands, hundreds of people that I don't think the demon would. Settle for anything less.
And the other thing that I think makes me convinced the ending is real is because when she's on stage, she has a hallucination on stage. She sees like a copy of herself rip her own scar open from her car accident and sort of split apart and pour out all this sort of monstery flesh stuff or whatever. And that's kind of what makes her collapse. And then she gets up and she's ready to smile and do the thing. So the fact that there's an illusion that she sees there, that the movie says, hey, this is an illusion, and then this is the final thing that it does to her that causes her to finally smile and do the killing. That to me says the ending is real. But that means that so much of what came before it was just a bunch of stuff in her head to make her crazier and crazier on the build up to when she finally snaps and does this.
What I can't tell is, I'm not sure if we're overthinking it or if the director underthought it. You know what I mean? Like, does he actually have a clear idea of what is happening, or did he just think, well, this would be cool, and then this could happen, which would be cool, and then, oh man, what if someone smiles? Like, I don't know.
I think he loves his premise, is my guess, and I think he does have an understanding. I just don't think I like what he has done.
I agree. No, I mean, bottom line, whatever is the case, I think the premise is, I don't know if I want to say it's inherently flawed, but it's something that I just do not like. I think there needs to be a more clear set of rules and what's going on, and I don't know, I'd prefer like at least some like glimmer of hope or something that you can fight back against this thing, some way to defeat it. Like even like, and I don't care if like I do prefer this ending where the main character dies because it is in front of a large crowd of people, because it is more interesting. But it would have been nice if, you know, there was like, it felt like she had a chance at some point instead of like it all just felt so futile.
I mean, let's take Freddy Krueger, right? Kills people in dreams. The easiest comparison. Right? There's a lot of, you know, he can do pretty much anything in the dream because it's a dream. But the movie goes out of its way over the course. It does it even again multiple times in some of the sequels, but in the original movie, it makes it clear at a certain point, there's some rules to this. I mean, rule number 1, don't go to sleep. Easy to understand, makes sense, and it confirms this general idea of that when we are awake. Now, that's not to say that there's not a couple of times where it does the thing where, the character's falling asleep and not realizing it. But that doesn't feel like it's breaking a rule, because sometimes you fall asleep. And especially if you've been trying to stay awake for, obscene amounts of time, it makes sense that you would doze off. But there's a simple...
whenever I have a dream, it doesn't start with me going, okay, I'm in a dream.
Yes. Right. So there's a simple, easy to understand rule there that we all just grasp it immediately, because we all go to sleep, we all wake up, we understand it. Right. And then as the movie progresses, it adds to that a little bit. But, by the whole, like, can you pull him into the real world? That kind of thing. Like, what's the backstory? Yada, yada, yada. But that core mechanic is so effective because it gives you a simple thing that the character is trying to do. Right? You understand how they're trying to fight this at all times. And the danger and, like, what the threat is that, hey, it'll never last forever. You're eventually going to fall asleep. And that's what it's ticking down to. In this movie, she's basically just asleep the entire time. Right? Yeah. She may not literally be asleep, because it's not sleeping in this case, but as soon as she has the curse, right? And yes, I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff in the first half that you could argue and say, yeah, that stuff is mostly definitely real, other than that one little thing she saw, and that's fine. But as it ramps up, effectively it doesn't matter, because like all of it could just be in her head and an illusion, and the ending kind of implies that much of it was. So I find that just incredibly like frustrating and just not engaging at all. I can't root for anything. I think maybe the movie having a character who we also follow, who has we get a perspective of someone who isn't affected by the demon, someone who's like a lightning rod who can like guide us a little bit, and we can always know that when we're with that character on their own that we're definitely seeing something that's real. And maybe use that to kind of like frame what's going on with the main character, and I think that could work. That could be something that you use.
Yeah, again, I remember so little about the first movie, but I did think that there was more of a like cast of characters in the first movie, where this is like very singularly focused. Which again, like the lead does a great job, so it's not necessarily a bad thing, and like there are other characters like the mom and the assistant and the friend and stuff, but they feel very like, not essential, like, or not as important as like, most movies would have like the other characters. Like they don't feel like, like second leads or whatever.
No, well, the big thing though is that they ultimately are always from the main character's perspective, which isn't a bad thing in general. That's fine in storytelling if you want to just make everything from the main character's perspective. But because we can't trust the main character's perspective in any way, it does mean that, like, because they do a whole thing, like, so we talked about how she has this best friend, right, who she's not spoken to in a year, because the backstory to the main character is that she had a heavy drug problem and drinking problem, and her and her actor boyfriend get into a car wreck, and he died. She didn't. She survived, and this is her comeback a year later, but she's not really spoken to her best friend since, and when we get a glimpse of her phone, we see that the last thing she ever said to her was something like, I hate you, you're a skank, or something. I don't know, something like that. It was very, very mean. and she finally works up the courage to text her, and the friend calls her later and says, hey, I'm surprised to hear from you. But they kind of patch things up. At least she's willing to come talk to her. And we get a whole sequence where she comes in, and this is right when she's seen something ghosty, so she's all freaking out, and she kind of opens up, and her friend forgives her pretty quickly, and like there's a couple of scenes. Something that really stuck out to me though is that so earlier on in the movie, the mum even said to Skye, hey, why don't you talk to Gemma? I think that was her name, the friend. Why don't you ask her to come and tour? She'll help. She's a good friend. She can keep you straight. And she's like, oh, I don't know what to talk to her. So it really makes it clear that the mum knows who Gemma is and seems to like her. The morning after she's come over, because she ends up spending the night because Skye's so freaked out. Right, and Skye obviously has more scary things happen when she's in bed and like sees her friend smiling, but she's not actually there. It's the morning, whatever. The mum comes in and she's mad because Skye slept in. It's late. She's got rehearsals, whatever, and she's like, I'm sorry, and she runs. And the friend Gemma's standing there holding like 2 cups of coffee or whatever it is, and she just kind of goes, hey, Mrs. whatever. And it did stick out to me that the mum didn't really react to the fact that she was like, that friend was there. She didn't say something like, oh, hey, it's nice to see you two together or whatever, right? It just cuts away. And I thought that was a strange moment. In hindsight, it's because this is planting for the reveal that the friend was never real in the first place. Because the real Gemma calls her much later on when the fake Gemma is driving the car and says, I was surprised to get your message, blah, blah, blah. And of course, Skye realizes and, freaks out. But it's like, okay, so we actually spent time setting that up. We had a scene, like a Sixth Sense style scene, where someone doesn't respond or acknowledge her existence, so that it made sense later when it's like, hey, she was never real. And I'm like, okay, it's not that surprising. I've seen this done in enough movies at this point that I'm not exactly floored by this. But then you go on further and you effectively then have to doubt a lot of what happens in the rest of the movie anyway. So it's like, why did we waste that time? I don't know. Especially since, because there's so many scenes of her seeing, because it starts off simple. It starts off with her seeing like something in a reflection, the dead guy that she saw earlier, and she looks around, he's there, he's not there, whatever. And there's some effective things. There's the whole thing where she's doing the signings and the meet and greet, and like the creepy guy comes up and he's kind of like holding her close and saying creepy stuff to her, and he gets dragged away by security.
I'm very curious if like that was something demon related, or if that was just like a weird creepy fan.
That's a good question. It could be either, I suppose.
My theory is that he was real in that instance, but then like later on that night when like she thinks he might be in the apartment, I think that is fake.
Oh yeah, obviously. Yeah, like, he's that's definitely just the demon at that point, yeah.
Which what's weird is like one part of that scene is that she just, and I guess it's not real, it's all part of the demon's thing, but like she just sees like his like dirty underwear on the ground.
Yeah, well, for full context, it's not just his underwear. It's like you see like his other clothes, and the camera kind of like goes down and down, and you eventually see the tighty whities, but there's like a brown stain at the bottom, which I'm like, okay. I guess if the argument is that this demon pulls things out of your head, and she was scared of this guy that day at work, this is like what she imagines his underwear would be like, and that's why it looks that way. But
it's like, shitty pants. Oh no.
But
my worst fear.
He stands there naked, just kind of staring at her in the dark, and she does a runner, and that's when her friend, the fake friend, Gemma, finally shows up. And it's an okay scene, but it's the sort of thing where I thought it was effectively directed, and it played on something that was set up. It played on this guy that was already set up, but it was kind of where I started to feel the churn of this same idea of her seeing something, someone seeing her react to it and being like, what's wrong, what's crazy, and it's like, oh, I don't know, I'm going mad, nothing's actually happening. Like, this was the start of that for me, where I started to really feel that. And the fact that the character she's reacting to and thinks, and Gemma's like saying, oh, what's wrong, you look kind of crazy right now, the fact that she herself turns out to be fake is just like an extra layer of pissing me off.
Oh no, yeah. It did kind of drive me crazy that I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like she never really tells anyone what's going on. Like, she says stuff like you said, like, oh, I think I'm going crazy or whatever, but she's never like, and I guess maybe she just doesn't believe, but which is really stupid though if she doesn't. But she's like, at some point when you'd be like, I know this is crazy, but like, I swear I'm not on drugs, but like, there's like a ghost or something that's like haunting me or like messing with me, because clearly stuff that is happening that's like not real. And I don't know, it just always feels like so unbelievable to me that like movies like this where this crazy stuff is happening and you're not even gonna like try to explain it to someone.
Yeah, I mean, at least in this part, like, she is still just sort of learning that there's supernatural stuff, because she's from her perspective, she saw a guy that she thought broke into her house, but then mysteriously nothing's there, so she is like, oh, I'm going crazy. But yeah, definitely by the time like other stuff starts happening, which is way more outrageous, and the fact that it's like ramping up as well, so it's getting bigger and bigger every time something happens.
Yeah, and like by the time she meets with the nurse guy, which I mean, at this point I'm questioning if he was ever even real or whatever. But
yeah,
by the time she's meeting with him and he's like talking about like curses and stuff, she's like so flippant about it. Like, oh, you're trying to tell me this is some supernatural thing? It's like, come on, at this point you have to like at least be open to the idea.
Yeah, because she's seen people smell at her all creepy. She, her dressing room got trashed at one point, and they like the mother clearly thinks she did it, and she's like blaming the assistant. Not just because she picked someone to blame. She saw him like walking from her dressing room smelling, creepy.
Yeah.
So she thinks he did it, and like that causes some friction, and there's a whole thing. Like, it's so frustrating to me because it feels like it touches on a lot of things that I could see going further if they really developed it. Like, they set up this idea that she's always drinking water because like part of her therapy for getting over her addictions is that whenever she feels out of control and that she would maybe want to take something, she should just down an entire bottle of water, and it's kind of like a control thing. And I'm like, okay, that's an interesting idea, this idea of the character trying to keep control of their mind, and they've already had to fight it with narcotics, so this is like them fighting it with a demon of some kind. And like, that would be interesting if it felt like she ever like won like a round with the demon. Like if she was strong enough to actually fight it, or if alternatively this was a tragedy about her like going back to her own demons, her personal demons, and like giving up and just getting a bunch of drugs or whatever by the end. That could be something too. But as it is, it just kind of feels like she kind of fights and fails, and she never really had a chance. And like, I want to try and like give that subtext in the context of the movie, but I don't know if I feel like I'm hearing a statement from that in terms of like if it's saying something about anything.
I'm sure if you talk to the director, he probably has an explanation for everything, but watching it doesn't feel like super thought out.
I mean, I know there's lots of things that like it brings up. Like, it brings up her addictions, it brings up this idea of control, it brings up this idea of her mother forcing this career on her now when she maybe isn't ready for it. It brings up the stress of all this and not wanting to let people down. But I just never felt like it really like paid off any of these things. And like, I never felt like it used all these things in the ending to be like, oh, this is either the happy outcome of her like proving some of this stuff, or the tragedy of like her failing at all of them. It never really felt like it did either of those things to me.
No, I agree. I think it does a good job of like bringing stuff up, and like having like some reasons for stuff. Like, okay, it makes sense that people would be very weary of her because of like the the drug addiction and why all this stuff is so important, because she needs this big comeback and stuff. Like, I was like, okay, those are like thought out ideas, but like you said, it ultimately doesn't go anywhere. Similar, to your bringing up the thing about about like the police investigation and everything, that it seems like that might be a big deal, but there's nothing. Like, not even like, you could have even done a thing where like the demon's messing with her and cops show up at the doors and then it's like fake or whatever. But yeah, I
mean, you're talking about the initial investigation for her being at the crime scene. Like, when you think about like after her mother's dead and she like gets out of the building by grabbing the security guard's gun and like saying sorry but pointing at all of them and saying leave me alone, and she runs out with a gun. Like, at this point, she is a famous pop star who is now going to be wanted for murder as soon as they find the body, and she's acting crazy. And it's insane to me that like nothing really does or comes from that. like
that's a good point.
It doesn't matter because then she just goes to the nurse guy. He takes her to a Pizza Hut in this part of the movie, which I don't think can be reality, because ultimately it's like she finds out, oh, everything's not been doing all this stuff. You know, when she like goes into the freezer and it kind of fades and it's like she's coming out of the fancy prop for the stage, right? That's what the transition is. It feels like all of this couldn't have been real, which then begs the question: your inner psyche picked a Pizza Hut for this to happen, an abandoned Pizza Hut, or the demon picked an abandoned Pizza Hut. I mean, what does that say if the demon's picking the Pizza Hut?
Yeah, I'm glad that you added abandoned there, because I don't, in case like someone hasn't watched the movie, I don't want them thinking like this is a full busy Pizza Hut that they're going into.
Tim, a full busy Pizza Hut doesn't exist anymore.
No, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Also, I worked at a Pizza Hut. That was like my first job in high school. And I can tell you that the freezers ain't that big.
Very good. This is like a bigger town, though. This is New York.
It's still, I don't think they
it was Staten Island specifically, but you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Which I only know that because they say it like 5 times. Like, when you go to Staten Island, we're going to Staten Island to meet this guy.
I think it's kind of funny. I think she's at one point she's like, "We need to go to Staten Island," and her friend's like, "Ooh, gross! Why?"
Yeah, those things always make me chuckle because obviously I just don't get the weird little like rivalries. Like, I've heard New Jersey been made fun of enough by like New Yorkers to like get that joke, but like all these little ones where it's like, oh, that part of the city's like, oh, like downtown. Like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway. I mean, obviously we've been bouncing around. We kind of just jumped out of the deep end because like that was the stuff that was more interesting to talk about. We haven't really talked about the actual curse moment yet, which is like the guy hitting himself with the weights. I did think that looked mostly pretty good. I think what I liked about it is that because this whole movie's premise is about the creepy smile, this idea that he like hit off half of his face, but you could still see that he was smiling, even with all the like bits missing and all that. I thought, okay, you know what? That's an interesting way to make the visual of the smile creepier. Is have the face be completely mutilated, basically. So you know, I thought that was fine. I think the character is interesting enough. Oh, actually, the guy that kills himself, the drug dealer, he randomly has a GameCube sitting under his TV. That's not important. That was a weird thing to notice.
I mean, good system, but it seems weird that would be like your go-to nowadays.
It was funny because it was the reason why I noticed it especially is because after the opening you get the title screen. It does a lot of the backstory by showing you the main character go on Drew Barrymore's talk show, but it doesn't just show you the footage. It shows you like the TV. It's like it's on a TV on a wall, and it turns out to be this drug dealer's wall. We don't know that at the time. It's not until later we see whose place this is. But the camera slowly comes into the TV as this interview is playing out, and it's like it's a good few minutes of like watching her like come out and explain the car accident and saying that she's having her big comeback and all that. Like because that's the other thing they do throughout the movies. They have occasionally like her remembering the accident, and we see by the end, like in the final flashback, that she actually intentionally swerved the wheel because she was fighting with the boyfriend. So she's got trauma, she's got guilt, she's got all that stuff going on. But usually when a character has that, I expect it to feel like fulfilled in some way at the end of the story. Like, you know, like something about their ending is, you know, I don't know.
Well, I mean, ideally, the ending would be them overcoming their trauma and then, you know, being able to get past it. But that's not what happened because she gets defeated.
Not at all, yeah. Not even close. Which, yeah, I mean, first of all, just cut out like 30, 40 minutes of this. Right? Get it slimmed right down. Maybe I'd be less angry about some of this stuff. I guess the big horror movie sequence, and there's a lot of little ones that we're never going to like talk about all of them, but the big one before she collapses, which leads to the hospital where she ends up with her mother being killed, is the one where it's like there's just like tons of fans smiling at her inside her apartment, like she, you know, and they're kind of like all up the door and like sort of it's kind of that thing where she turns around, then she turns back, and they've all moved forward at her. So I suspect the people who like this movie probably love this scene, and it's fine. Like I have no real complaints about it.
I'll give it credit. I actually quite like this scene. I thought it was pretty effective. Again, I don't really care about the people smiling. Like, it doesn't. I don't think it's like creepy to just look and all of a sudden see someone smiling, but I actually thought this was like effective and kind of creepy, not because the people were smiling, but because, like you said, they were just in very odd positions.
I think that idea that because she's famous, like one of the main themes either is or at least should be like how smothered she might feel sometimes by like all the fans and the attention they give her. So I think that's why this scene works, is regardless of the smiling, the fact that they're kind of all getting closer and invading her personal space makes sense to me.
No, I agree. I thought, it was just very effectively done. Like, regardless if, what you think of the curse or whatever, I think that this was at least like a good showcase of something, it's kind of freaky and, and not necessarily something that I see a lot of in like horror movies. Like, I can't think of tons of scenes that are similar to this, because even when you get something like, usually be like in a zombie movie or something where you get like a large crowd of people or whatever, like, they're not kind of moving like in this weird kind of, creepy kind of way.
Yeah, and it doesn't have that problem that some of the other scenes do, where like, of course this isn't real, we know this isn't real, but it's just about it being creepy at her. So there's no pretense that we have to like deal with.
Yeah, like at least with this scene afterwards, we're not trying to think about like, okay, did that really happen? Like, were all those people really in the apartment? Like, at least like, I'm more okay with this because it's like, okay, it's very obvious that this is like a thing the demon's doing and not something that we're gonna spend 15 minutes discussing if it actually did or didn't happen.
Yeah, I almost wish though this was a bigger theme of the movie though, is this idea of like the pressure of fame and like everyone coming at her, because it feels more like it's about the like her having like her drug problems and being like a toxic friend and girlfriend and like what happened because of what she did. That's really what the movie's kind of about. It's about her guilt with all that and like the trying to pretend that she's okay and ready to move on. It's not like, because I almost think like there's maybe a lot to do, because you could almost have like a metaphorical zombie movie where like the crowd of the people coming for her or the zombie horde kind of thing. Like, you could do a lot with that, and that's kind of, I guess, what that creepy scene kind of like made me think of. So I just very very frustrated. We kind of briefly mentioned the scene where she goes to the charity thing and like she ends up smearing her makeup by accident because there's a fly, and then the teleprompter doesn't work. Or, well, the demon makes it not work, at the very least. And she just ends up ad-libbing and ends up talking about how she's a mess and how she is a drug addict and how music seemed like a dream but kind of ruined her life as well. and then reads her dead boyfriend's name, which makes everyone gasp and whatnot.
I actually thought this scene was pretty effective, too. Like, I liked her breaking down, but, like... This was more of like a believable kind of way where like, yes, the demon's messing with her, but it did it in a way that's believable, that like, okay, yeah, the teleprompter broke down and she's so stressed and frustrated now that she's just going to blurt out all this stuff she shouldn't say, versus like, it's like the demon like made something scary happen and then she started like freaking out and everyone's like, oh, what? And then like,
well, it does it does that at the end though, because the dead boyfriend like starts walking towards the stage smiling at her.
Yeah, like I didn't necessarily need that, but like I did think it was like interesting to have his name pop up on the teleprompter, and then it is like very shocking when she says it. I
did like her performance in that moment, because the way she said it, she sort of said it and then realized as she was finishing the words what she just said, which makes sense because she's just reading it. And then the way she reacts, as much as everyone else is shocked, she's equally like, wait a minute, who put that there? Like, she's mad at whoever wrote that. I thought that performance was good. I didn't love this scene though, and I think it is because I was already done with her being made to look crazy in front of people, right? Regardless of how realistic it was in the way it happened here. Just at this point, I was kind of done. Because at this point, I think we were almost done with the movie here. Like, we really were deep in at this point, and it felt like we took a long time to get to any like progression and like what will actually happen in the story. Now, I do tend to be a little bit more critical of movies where we're following one character and their viewpoint is unreliable. Sometimes it can work, and I think when it does work, like I almost want to find some examples and like analyze them and like say, okay, this is why this works for me and why these other ones don't. But I think just they're feeling like there's like a central point or something that it's trying to get across about the person or about like what's happening to them. I think that's a big thing for me. If I've got like subtext that I'm latching on to where I'm saying, okay, this is why this is happening, this is why this is happening, even if it's logically not making that much sense, I understand what it's saying about the character and I can kind of like get something out of it. As it is though in here, I just feel like, no, we're doing this because it's creepy. We're doing this because it's creepy. We're doing this because it's a little bit spooky. We're doing this because it's violent. And then, oh, we're doing this because this is the ending I want. Like,
yeah.
So frustrating for me in that respect.
No, I agree. Should we mention though who plays her dead boyfriend?
I actually don't know who plays a dead boyfriend. Go on.
Well, I'm not sure his first name. Is it Ray? I don't know, that could be completely wrong, but it's Jack Nicholson's son.
Do you know what? I was going to guess that, and do you know why? Because
Why?
he smells like Jack Nicholson. I thought that. See, when he was walking up to the stage, I thought he's got a Jack Nicholson smell. I am not shocked you just said that.
I mean, yeah, that's a good person to get because, yeah, he has a very iconic, creepy smile, and it seems like he inherited it.
Yeah, that's another actually very small but connection to the substance actually for me is that I actually think that Dennis Quaid has a bit of a Jack Nicholson smile.
Oh, okay. I can see that, yeah.
When he's overdoing it, when he's doing like a big smile like he does in that movie, I think he's got a bit of a Jack Nicholson kind of smile at him. Well, that's interesting. That's cool, I guess. He's a very young son for Jack Nicholson's age. Jack Nicholson's like 80. And this guy, he's like, I mean, he's probably just a bit hit 30 now, but he's not. Like, Jack Nicholson, I would have thought would have had kids, like, in the 70s, who should be in their 50s by now.
No, I mean, unless it's his grandkid, but I'm pretty sure it's just his kid.
I mean, don't get me wrong, Jack Nicholson, I'm sure, has been...
I mean, I'm pretty sure I just saw, like, a news article that was talking about, like, Robert De Niro and his, like, 20-month-old daughter.
Oh, sure, yes. Like... I think some of these actors, you hear about Al Pacino having a kid when he's in his mid-70s, so, like, it's not that weird, I guess, and Jack Nicholson definitely seems like someone who was probably spreading his seed as much as he could, so fair enough.
I mean, it's so bizarre, like, I just get winded if I have to, like, carry my son for more than, like, 3 minutes. I can't imagine.
Well, Tim. You don't think they've got a staff of people dealing with all that for them?
Oh, of course, yeah.
They're not lifting the kid up themselves. We were jumping around, so I'm sure there's some things that we should probably bring up, but nothing's springing to mind.
I mean, I think we covered all, like, the big moments. I don't think, like... There might have been, like, a few, like, small jump scares, but I don't think there was, like, any other big set pieces. I mean, I guess that when they do finally do the flashback to, the car ride and the accident, I mean, I guess there's not really much to it. I mean, we already mentioned, like, what happens.
I think the filming, like, it's very stylized in how it's shot, because it's like the camera is like spinning back to face. Like, so when she says something, the camera then spins back around to him, and they're having this argument, they're calling each other nasty things, whatever, and then it just stays on that shot when they go off the side of the road. So it's this one big oneer. Now, I'm sure there's some trickery here. They could have been cutting every single time it panned, because it pans so quickly they could easily fake that. But regardless, though, is this continuous shot that they go for, which does give it a bit of a. It feels very in your face with how they're arguing.
Yeah. So, how do you feel about, like, at the end when? All right, so they're doing the pizza thing. They have the plan, and then that nurse guy leaves, and then she's basically confronted with like her past self, like around the time of the accident. So
yes.
You basically get a showdown between her and her past. And it's kind of.
No, you go. You can finish what you're saying.
Oh no, it's just kind of interesting because like she has like this very like short stylized hair, and then we kind of find out as the movie's going on, it seems like that's kind of like two purposes to that. Like one is that she has this compulsion to like rip her hair out, throughout the movie. So I'm guessing she wants it short, so she doesn't always want to do that. But then also it seems like it's to kind of differentiate like her now and how she was before, when she had like this long black hair. And then it just makes it for an interesting showdown when you have like two of the same people, but it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's like the demon because it's like her past self with the long black hair. And I'll say like I didn't need most of this stuff, but I did think it was like kind of a cool visual, I guess, of like her on the table and then looking up and then seeing like her in the car seat on the ceiling. Like I thought like, okay, there's like something kind of cool there, but then the rest of it I like didn't really care about.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty shite, if I'm honest. I just didn't need her fighting a demon version of herself, you know? It just was like, if you're going to be a creepy horror like supernatural movie, then be a creepy supernatural movie. Like, I don't need a fight, like as if we're having a showdown. I don't know. That didn't really do much for me, I have to say. It's worth saying though that by this point in the movie, like I said, the entire last half I was pretty bored and just waiting for it to end. But by the time we got to this part in the Pizza Hut, I was like so done. Like I was being especially like harsh and just not feeling anything. The weird thing is though, I do like the concept of the final scene, because the final scene's actually exactly what this movie should have went. It's just that the premise inherently means we have to either do this constant like, oh, that wasn't real bullshit, or we have to somehow ride the lightning where she still ends up performing after the week, which would probably mean, to compare it to The Ring again, it would probably be like, oh, she has to think halfway through or whatever that she solved the curse and think she's okay now, but then the big shock ending is, no, she didn't solve the curse, it was still coming for her. Now it's happening on stage. Which, well, that wouldn't have been original. I think I would have preferred that way more than this, oh, that wasn't real, oh, this entire chunk wasn't real. Yeah, I just...
I mean, I'm very curious what the third one's going to be like then, because, theoretically you want to, like, always kind of up the stakes and, make the sequels bigger. And, I would say this one is definitely, is much bigger than the first one. But then it's kind of like, well, where do you go from here? Like, how do you top, a pop star and then...
Well, if it follows on from this one, then surely it's an epidemic. Surely there's, like, tons of people having this at the same time. So maybe that's what they do with it. They go for, like, mass rather than, like, I don't know. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe, like, a politician's, like, making a speech and does it on air or something, and, like everyone gets infected with it.
Yeah, I mean, essentially that could be something, maybe an interesting angle is, not like an anthology movie or something, but yeah, if you're following a lot of different characters, there could be something to that. Might be a bit more interesting.
Honestly, the whole, it's like using your own trauma to like mess with you. That might honestly be better in like a short form thing where it's only like 20 minutes, so you get the basic ideas across and then like how they finally die, as opposed to we have to draw it out for over 2 hours and like milk it so much that like it feels like almost a disservice that it doesn't have more to actually say about what they're going through. So, all right, Tim, what was your scene of the movie?
I mean, I already mentioned it, but yeah, I think the scene with just all the people in their apartment, just like all over the walls and stuff. I just thought that was really well done, and very interesting, and had a creepy feel to it. So I thought that was effective. It worked on me.
Bizarrely, I might even just go with the opening, just like because the ending of it's so strong that it was probably like I probably actually felt a bit of, oh, this might be good, and it didn't like go away like immediately either. Like the introduction to the main character was solid enough, and it like like everything up until she got the curse I think was perfectly fine, but then it got really repetitive. But so yeah, I'll go with the opening because the trail of blood making the smile I did think was an inspired little choice. Yeah. So yeah, let's go with that. All right, MVP. Well, there's really only one choice, but there you go.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, I got to give it up to Naomi Scott, which I'm sure I must have seen her in something before. She looked familiar, but
did you see the Power Rangers movie from a few years ago?
I actually haven't.
Oh, okay. Well, she's in that.
I haven't. I had it on my list forever. Like, I heard it's actually not that bad.
I kind of like it. Like, oh, it's not perfect, but I rewatched it last year and still had a good time. So
yeah, I did like Power Rangers growing up, but it's not like something I've kind of held my love for. Like,
sure,
I don't hate it, but I don't have as much nostalgia for it as I do like Ninja Turtles or something.
I mean, that's fair. I think because it is so kiddie, the TV show, but I think because you have some nostalgia for it, I think a 2-hour movie that just sort of plays on that is the right amount of of like, hey, yeah, it's nice to remember this a little bit.
Yeah, I think I saw it was streaming on something like recently, and I put it on my list. But okay, maybe I'll finally check that out.
Yeah, I'm curious since you asked what if she's been in anything else notable. She was in the live action Aladdin, which I guess is what a lot of people might know her from.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't see it, of course, but
I might have seen like 5 minutes of it.
Yeah,
I feel like I always watch those live action Disney movies to be like, oh, maybe this will be fun, and then I'm like, why am I watching this when I could watch the like original cartoon?
Hey, just you away. You've got a daughter now, Tim. It's not going to be that long before she wants to watch some of the worst shit imaginable on repeat.
We'll see. I honestly, I don't mind watching a lot of these like kids shows because like they're so relentlessly positive and like the world is so oppressingly bleak that like it's kind of nice to watch something that's just like, hey, remember guys, like be good to each other and share and like have each other's backs, and then it's a nice little break, like for the half hour when we watch stuff like that versus when I check the news and it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm about to enter another world war, cool, or like whatever is going on that day. But also it's nice to have a break where they're just not like constantly punching each other or crapping their pants or whatever. So.
Oh, the children. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I thought you meant people in the news, but on you go.
Yeah. So in summary, I would say Naomi Scott was my Sky Riley. Was my MVP.
She was your Sky Riley as opposed to anyone else's Sky Riley.
But I mean, I seriously do think that the whole movie hangs on her, and I mean, it's really just because she's such a good performer, and following her around was just so much more interesting than anything that was like in the first one or a lot of the kind of characters and stuff that we see in the generic horror movies. So if there's any reason why I'm positive on this movie, it's mostly because she was very engaging and interesting to follow. I agree, like a lot of stuff gets like repetitive, but it would have been so much worse if it was just some generic CW actor that like we don't care about or whatever. No offense to the CW, I don't even know if it's still around, but
it is, although they've changed their programming now. It's mostly reality stuff, I think, and stuff like that. But anyway, I mean, yeah, it's Naomi Scott. There's not really any other choices, but she is good. Like, I think the concept's what lets this movie down, which sadly I don't think was going to be fixed. I think it has to shake up what it is, what its formula is for me to be. And it's not even like it does the exact same thing as the first movie. It is a bit different, but it's not different in ways that make me like it that much more. So a few well-directed scenes and her performances are the things that stick out. So what you rating Smile 2, Tim?
Coming into it, I was somewhat positive, and I was kind of floating like around a 6, because I did think this is a huge step above the first one, and again, I think there are flaws, but it's easier to not necessarily overlook them, but be more comfortable with them when there's also good stuff I like and like characters I enjoy and all this stuff. I am going to drop it half a point though and go to 5.5 just because all of our talk about what was real and what isn't real just really upset me, and like
sorry, Tim.
because now like even though there's stuff that I'm like, okay, yeah, that was enjoyable or whatever, it pisses me off now. It's like, all right, well, that was a good scene, but did it happen? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, like I said before, I think this franchise, it's going in the right direction, and it's doing some, stuff that's admirable with like the filming and the performers and like character work and stuff. But at the end of the day, it's a horror movie, and the horror part of it is like the one that we have the most issues with. And I don't know if that's not going to get fixed. I don't know, if this franchise will ever really ascend into something that, I genuinely like or look forward to, which is a shame because clearly, the director has some chops and stuff, but it's, I don't know, it's just the horror aspect of it just needs work. As well as like, probably like you said, like tightening it up and stuff, and little fixes here and there that, would go a long way. But, huge step up from the first one, but still not like, up there with like something that's like great or whatever.
Yeah, I'm actually curious what we gave the first one if I go and check. So the first movie, we didn't rate it that much. Like, I gave the first one a 5 and you gave it a 4.
Really?
Yeah. 5 does seem a bit positive in hindsight, if I'm honest. I don't Hey, this is just tying back into that idea we had about going back and checking, like, do we still feel the same way about some of these old reviews?
Yeah. I mean, the thing that sucks is I would have to watch it again.
Of course, yeah.
If my score goes up and down.
I mean, I think really your 4 sounds more fair to me in my memory now than my 5 does. I think, but I get, but based on this one though, having not remembered the first one, I'm going to assume that the reason why I give it a 5 is that despite not liking the premise and thinking a lot of it was stupid, that the direction was probably solid, because the direction in this is mostly pretty solid, and that's probably why it got to that midpoint.
Like I feel like from the again with the first one, I don't remember too much like specific stuff, but I feel like it was a generic horror movie, but it was like a bit better done than other generic horror movies, and again, that a lot of that is probably having to do with like the direction and the quality, technical quality aspects of it. But.
Yeah, so I'm in a weird spot here because I'm actually just going to give this a straight 5 because I'm just too annoyed at a lot of things to go any higher than that. But I'm saying that with the asterisk that I think I would rate the first one lower if I saw it again.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's fair.
So I do think it's better, but I'm still only going to go with the 5. So there you go. That's our thoughts on Smile 2. Which is a bit of a shame because this like, because there was some buzz, I thought, maybe this will be a bit of a surprise gem. That said, though, we've actually done a lot of decent to great movies recently, so it's actually not been that much of a bad time. I won't say what's coming next time exactly because it's the schedule. Like, we don't know exactly the order of episodes coming out, so I'll just leave it a mystery. But it's another 2024 movie most likely. So
we're banking a lot of stuff right now, so hopefully that we should have a decent number of episodes while we can. But yeah, who knows the order?
Yeah. Well, there'll be one next week. Look forward to it. But anyway, that is the show, though. You can, of course, support Screams After Midnight and all the other shows of MailFuzz Movies and MailFuzz TV over at our Patreon, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Some of the bonuses for streams are on hold for a bit, although there was a supersized 2-hour bonus, even more streams, which is where we went through all the movies coming out in 2025. Well, 50 of the movies coming out in 2025 at least, and just gave some thoughts, some hype or unhype as the case may be. But that was a 2-hour beast, so there is some bonus content for streams that's fresh. But there's a whole back catalogue. There's bonus content going up for the other shows right now. Right now, we're just focusing on banking as many regular episodes because we have about a week and a half to get some in, so we're cramming them in. But go over to Patreon and check out that stuff. It's obviously a great help. You can also support us via YouTube by liking, subscribing. There's YouTube membership if you'd rather do that instead of Patreon for whatever reason. But that is the show, everyone. So thank you very much for joining. We do appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.